Burkina Faso's army chooses Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida to lead a transitional period as opposition parties and the African Union reject the army takeover. Malnutrition cripples child development in South Africa. And a tightrope walking daredevil conquers the Chicago skyline. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Lenore Moudou. Vincent McCurry is on assignment. This is Africa 54. Tonight, Burkina Faso's military leadership is trying to assure the nation's citizens that there will be a smooth and peaceful political transition to its next president. Over the weekend, the army installed Lieutenant Colonel Yacouba Isaac Zida to head the transition, a move that is being criticized by opposition politicians and Western powers who are seeking a quick return to civilian rule. On Sunday, there were signs of discontent with the appointment as soldiers from the Presidential Guard fired shots into the air to clear thousands of protesters gathered outside the National TV headquarters after opposition party head Sarah Sereme arrived there with a group of supporters. There were no reported injuries to the demonstrators, but there was plenty of anger expressed at military rule.
We want to preserve the gains of democracy, and we want a democracy for the people that will not be betrayed.
Burkina Faso's longtime president Blaise Compaoré stepped down last week after 2 days of mass protest over his bid to change the constitution to seek a third presidential term. It's been more than 200 days since Boko Haram abducted schoolgirls in Chibok, Borno State, northeast Nigeria. At a rally in Abuja on Friday, there were emotion-laden speeches by activists asking the government to do more to rescue the girls. We have a report from Channels TV, our partner in Nigeria.
It all began as an attempt to put pressure on the federal government to rescue the over 200 schoolgirls abducted from Chibok in Borno State on April the 14th this year. Some Nigerians began a daily sit-out at the Unity Fountain in Abuja. Like a sore thumb that has defied medical solution, the sit-out by members of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign soon attracted attention, which led to a former commissioner of police, Joseph Mbu, banning the protest on the 2nd of June 2014. The activists responded to the ban with a court action. In a judgment that lasted less than an hour, Justice Ebenezer Aladetoyinbo held that the police lacks the powers to stop peaceful protests and rallies. Lawyer to the activists applauded the verdict of the court.
First of all, the court struck out the preliminary objection filed by the police that the court lacks the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. So having struck out the preliminary objection, the court now further held that the Nigerian police or any security agency in Nigeria had no power to stop citizens of Nigeria from protesting. You cannot restrain Nigerians from carrying out their fundamental human rights as contained in the Constitution. The court reaffirmed the position of the law, especially Section 40 of the Constitution, that Nigerians have the right to protest.
The lawyer to the police, however, says the judgment will be studied.
The court has given its judgment, so we are going to look at the judgment, and if we are not satisfied with it, we take the next step.
Peaceful street demonstrations in Abuja have become a regular feature of the campaign to put pressure on government and keep the issue in the public domain 200 days after the girls were abducted from a school in northern Nigeria on April 14th.
The ceasefire deal announced on October 17th followed a month of negotiations with representatives of Boko Haram. At the time, an aide to Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan said the final negotiations on the girls' release would be completed at a meeting a week later in Chad. But so far, there is no sign of the missing girls. Each day, 25% of South Africans face hunger. The number of children with severe stunting due to malnutrition has increased in the past few years. Yet the international group Oxfam says the problem is absent from public debate in a country that is self-sufficient in food production. As Emily Yob reports from Johannesburg, a lack of education and limited access to affordable, balanced foods are some of the main causes of hunger.
These children eating their morning porridge are not in a school canteen, but in a rehabilitation center for malnourished children. In South Africa, official statistics show almost a quarter of the population faces hunger on a regular basis. The country is considered food secure, but factors such as price inflations and high unemployment prevent some from accessing not only enough food, but also enough quality food. According to Oxfam Rashmi Mistry, a chronic lack of nutrition affects 25% of children with serious consequences.
Stunting and malnutrition starts in the womb. So when mothers don't have enough to eat or don't have the right type of food to eat, then it impacts on the fetus and it starts from there. So if you've got a few rands to spend on food, you're going to buy something that fills you up. And that's usually starches, potatoes or rice or a mealie meal. They'll fill you up. But those foods have very, very little nutrition.
In the past 6 years, the cost for a basic food basket here increased by more than 40%. To help people be able to afford healthy food, the NGO African Children Feeding Scheme, or ACFS, is teaching adults how to grow their own food. Nosipo Siswene lives on a government stipend of $86 a month to feed her family of 5. She says since she started a garden, she saves half of her food budget.
I didn't like gardening before because I didn't understand anything about it. But after I was taught how to garden, I quickly loved it. I'm saving money because I don't have to buy all these veggies anymore. I eat healthy food now because I get them fresh from my garden.
Education on what constitutes a balanced diet is another tool in combating hunger here.
We have 3 kinds of food. We have the carbohydrates, we have the proteins, and we have the vitamins.
This ACFS staffer is training women on not only what to grow, but what to eat. Many in the class say they have gained a lot of valuable information.
The nutrition classes taught me that we mustn't give children junk food or takeaway or porridge at every meal. We have to do a proper balanced diet for the child so he's able to do well at school.
ACFS has been operating here for more than 60 years and provides support to hundreds of families every day. Executive Director Pindele Shalele says the need for its services has not decreased, but donations have.
The need is huge. It's not decreasing, it's huge. We're still proceeding as we use, but in future, if things they don't become better, we'll have to scale it down.
In its recent report, Oxfam recommends South Africa's government introduce a National Food Act in order to eradicate hunger and malnutrition. While the right to food is enshrined in South Africa's constitution, it appears not yet to be completely in practice. Emily Yob for VOA News, Johannesburg.
VOA's Pauline Diho recently returned from Zambia, where he spoke with a group of gay rights activists about the nation's anti-gay laws. And he joins us now with more on the issue. Paul?
Thanks, Alina. Homosexuality is illegal in Zambia. It's a situation that has drawn increasing criticism from many Western nations. Local activists say the rights of homosexuals and other marginalized groups should be protected, and are calling on the government to be tolerant towards different sexual orientations. Homosexuality is a taboo in many African countries. It's illegal in 37 nations on the continent, and activists say few Africans are openly gay, fearing imprisonment, violence, and to some extent losing their jobs. However, gay rights activists are beginning to speak out about the treatment of homosexuals and other marginalized groups. Zambia's tough anti-homosexuality laws date back to the British colonial era, and public opinion remains strongly against gays and lesbians. Jane Kulaba is a renowned human rights activist and runs the Debt Resource Foundation, a Christian non-governmental organization. She says that the government says that any discussion concerning gays and homosexuals is considered promoting immorality in the nation.
But since we are Christians, let us tolerate one another. It's my view that we should meet at a certain point Let us allow for dialogue, go for dialogue. We discuss these issues. We just create that relationship with the public.
Ms. Kulaba's organization is trying to engage the government, churches, and other human rights organizations in shaping the paradigm shift on how society views the lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgender community. Some churches are beginning to open up and to speak publicly about the rights of gays. Reverend Patson Kabbalah of a Presbyterian Church of South Africa says the people who feel oriented towards people of the same sex should be embraced.
In my view, they need to be embraced. They need to be given space in society.
Reverend Telas Shumba of the Reformed Church of Zambia shares the same sentiment.
The government must come with a law that should embrace almost everybody, regardless of whether they are on the other side of the story or not.
Zambian gay rights activist David Musonda says the government needs to create an atmosphere where the LGBT community, government, church leaders, and civil society can meet and have a dialogue to forge a way forward.
To all the people out there, when you see even a person who is gay or who is a lesbian, who is intersex, let us not rush to killing them. They are a child to somebody, they are a father to somebody. Let us just look for remedies. What is the best remedy? If it's maybe to create, to have an understanding with them, let us strike that particular balance.
In 2013, a Zambian gay couple, Philip Mbiana and James Mwapi, were living together in Kapiri, Mposhi. They were later detained, tried and acquitted on charges of having consensual gay sex. The subject of gay rights is almost greeted with disapproval, and many believe homosexuality goes against the religious values of the country. At this workshop organized by Panos Institute, an organization that empowers communities to shape their own agendas, has brought together community leaders, civil society groups, and gay rights activists to debate the issue. Lilian Kiefa is the executive director, Panos Institute.
We know that we are treading on a sensitive ground, but we also acknowledge that homosexuality exists in Zambia, and the fact that it is underground and hidden creates other complications in other aspects of life.
In Zambia, a conviction for sodomy carries a 14-year prison sentence. Other African countries are struggling with the anti-homosexuality laws that date back to the British colonial era. A Ugandan constitutional court recently annulled a tough anti-gay legislation signed into law by President Yoweri Museveni. Voice of America reached out to Zambian government officials for comment on their anti-gay laws, but they declined. Back to you, Linal.
Thanks, Paul, for this insightful report. Now, a former South African soldier published a book earlier this year titled Back to Angola. It's about his journey back to a country he knew only in a state of war 25 years ago. Here's VOA's Caroline Turner.
Paul Morris was 20 years old when he was sent to Angola as a soldier in the South African Army in 1987. They were allied with the rebels in the Angola Civil War, fighting against the Angolan Army. 25 years later, he went back there, this time by choice and on a bike.
The essence of my decision to go back there was to see Angola in peacetime. My memories of Angola were just about war. The mere mention of the word Angola just meant war. It meant darkness, it meant fear, it meant nightmares, and I just wanted to change that. I wanted to have a balanced memory.
The 45-year-old pedaled for almost 1,500 kilometers from Cuito-Kuna Valley in southeast Angola to his old unit's base in northern Namibia, entirely on his own. It took him 3 weeks, riding for 8 to 10 hours a day and sleeping in villages or the bush.
The Angolan countryside in places is still littered with, in 2012 at least, it was still littered with military wreckage. Particularly on the road between Cuito Carnaval and Monongi, which used to be known as the Road of Death because of the government forces, convoys being ambushed, trying to reinforce Cuito.
Morris spent 3 months fighting in Angola in 1987, firing mortars that he knew were killing people. It's a fact that he avoided thinking about for years until he realized that the memories were still haunting him and giving him nightmares. By returning to Angola and seeing the country in peacetime and communicating with villagers despite the language barrier, he was able to make peace with his own past.
The essence of my journey was to complete this healing journey, complete my own healing journey, and it worked. I think I met these amazing people, former enemies. We had conversations that afterwards I realized were important for them too, in terms of their own healing.
Morris translated that physically and emotionally exhausting trek into a book, Back to Angola. It's a chronicle of two journeys, a quarter of a century apart, that reconciles the young soldier with the grown man. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, political power games. U.S. candidates make final pitches ahead of Tuesday's midterm elections. The details are just ahead.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
Across the United States, candidates are making final pleas for votes ahead of Tuesday's midterm elections. At stake, which party will control each house of the U.S. Congress for President Barack Obama's final 2 years in office? VOA's Michael Bowman reports.
It is crunch time for candidates seeking to rally supporters and convince any remaining undecided voters. Georgia Democratic Senate candidate Michelle Nunn.
We are reminding everybody about their power to make a difference in this election by getting out and voting.
Both parties have deployed their biggest names to the campaign trails. Former Republican presidential contenders Mitt Romney and John McCain. There you go. And on the Democratic side, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Notably absent from most Democratic campaigns, President Obama, whose declining approval numbers have vulnerable Democratic lawmakers distancing themselves from the White House.
It's good to be back in Michigan.
Even so, Mr. Obama did make a campaign appearance in Michigan last week.
I want to tell you why you need to vote. This country has made real progress since the worst economic crisis of our lifetimes. Over the past 4.5 years, we have seen American businesses create more than 10 million new jobs. Over the past 6 months, our economy has grown at the fastest pace in more than 10 years.
Political analyst Norm Ornstein.
Barack Obama finds himself in the same kind of position that Bush did 6 years ago. For an awful lot of his own candidates, persona non grata, except for raising money. They love the money. They don't want to have the president side by side with them.
Republicans, on the other hand, are eager to tie their Democratic opponents to the president. Senate candidate Scott Brown in New Hampshire.
The Obama-Shaheen agenda ends right here, right now.
Republicans are widely expected to retain control of the House of Representatives. In the Senate, they would need a net gain of 6 seats to seize control from Democrats.
We have a fairly clear idea that the trends favor, as they would normally, the Republican Party. The party out of the presidency does well in midterms. It's a tough road for Democrats. There's a route to get to keeping your majority. Republicans have multiple routes to taking a majority.
Democrats tout a massive voter mobilization effort they say will prove the polls wrong. Republicans, meanwhile, are sounding increasingly confident of victory on Tuesday. As always, those who show up to vote get the final say. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Still to come on Africa 54, how Africans are preserving their culture and cuisine in their new homes here in America. But first, here's a recap of Monday's headlines.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Burkina Faso, interim President Yacouba Isaac Zida says the army would cede power to a transitional government led by a consensual leader. In Zambia, civilians gather to celebrate the life of President Michael Sata, who died last week after a long illness and will be buried on November 11th. In Libya, fighting has slowed in Tripoli after 5 weeks of clashes between rival factions over control of the city. Finally, in Tunisia, Kaltoum Kenu becomes the first woman to gain a nomination for the country's presidency. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. The king of Bollywood celebrates his birthday as fans cheer. In India's showbiz capital, Mumbai, King Khan celebrated his 49th birthday with hundreds of ardent fans who gathered outside his palatial bungalow to catch a glimpse of their favorite heartthrob. In the afternoon, fans burst into cheers as Khan came out of his bungalow and waved at them. Khan's latest film, Happy New Year, had a record opening, bringing in over 1 billion rupees or $17 million. From Bollywood to Hollywood, holiday viewing.
My Christmas wish, I wish I meet a friend, one on whom I can depend.
Who, me? You really screwed up your big wish.
Okay.
Grumpy Cat, the famous internet feline, is still not smiling as a movie star. Voiced by Aubrey Plaza, the cat stars in Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas Ever. It's about a 12-year-old girl who has her holiday wish for a friend come true. Grumpy Cat shot to fame after her owner posted a picture of her on Reddit back in 2012. Since then, the cat has become a viral sensation, featured in books, calendars, and TV shows. How about that? And finally, don't try this at home. Nick Wallander set world records Sunday walking the tightrope between Chicago skyscrapers. Nick is the great-grandson of Carl Wallander of the famous Flying Wallander circus family. He successfully walked the wire blindfolded and without a net or harness. It looked just 6 minutes and 51 seconds. The event was broadcast with a 10-second delay just in case Wallander fell. And that's what's trending today.
How awesome is that? How are your fingers?
Now, Africans living in the U.S. don't have to leave all of the comforts of home. They can bring a bit of the culture with them through cooking. Our guest correspondent, Ini Thompson of Channels TV in Nigeria, explored the African food scene in and out around Washington, D.C.
The world has become a global village, not just in terms of technology and communication, but in basic things like food. After traveling for hundreds of kilometers away from home, Africans still have many windows of keeping their taste buds connected to their roots, and this makes a good business to even non-Africans.
Most of the Africans, they like to cook, so they don't go to the restaurant, and they like to cook every day. So they come here and they buy their own. They can, they come, most of my customers, they travel, they call from different states. And they're trying to find their right product.
For those who do not have the time to cook, Patrick Tosope has made it his business to make them satisfied. In providing this service, even non-Africans enjoy the African cuisine.
I cook sometimes, but it's so amazing to find something in Washington, D.C. area where you can have the food from your country and you can enjoy to see people and interact like when you are back home.
For Patrick, his list of clientele surprises even him.
All over the world.
from Japan to China. Everybody come here. I ask them, how you like the food they eat for the first time? And then they say, no, the food is great, that's good. And then I conclude that the tongue of everybody in the world is the same. When the food is good, they report it, the tongue report it.
As world leaders search for ways of finding lasting peace among countries, exchange of the ways of living like food may just contribute to this long-standing challenge. Ini Thompson reporting for VOA News.
It's time for our Monday Sports Report, and here is Sunny Young with the sunny side of sports. Sunny, a football star was laid to rest over the weekend.
Yes, Lenore, the sunny side of sports begins on a somber note. A funeral service was held over the weekend in South Africa's coastal city of Durban for Senzo Meyiwa, the Orlando Pirates goalkeeper and national team captain, who was killed in a robbery October 26th. Mourners at the packed Moses Mabhida Stadium held signs honoring Meyiwa, while video footage of his career was shown on a big screen, bringing both cheers and tears. Danny Jordan, the president of the South African Football Association, describes Senzo's death as cruel, tragic, and senseless. The slaying of a popular South African football hero has shocked the country and again brought attention to South Africa's gun violence and high murder rate. Senzo Meyiwa's coffin was draped in the South African flag as it left the stadium. Turning to African athletics, for the second year in a row, Kenyans won the men's and women's titles at the New York City Marathon. About 50,000 runners were on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge for the start of the popular race, which goes through all 5 boroughs of New York City. Former world record holder Wilson Kipsang captured the men's title in 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 59 seconds, and Mary Keitany won the women's race in 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 7 seconds. Keitany and Kipsang each earned $100,000, while Kipsang also clinched a $500,000 World Marathon Majors bonus. I'm Sunny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Lenore?
Thanks, Sunny. Be sure to watch the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa, between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
When you hear a story about American business, sometimes you hear this phrase, stock market.
Traders are pausing Thursday after the U.S. stock market's longest rally since July.
A stock market is where people buy and sell ownership certificates or stock in companies. Many countries have stock markets.
In the United States, the best known one is the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. The NASDAQ is another American stock market. Now, when you hear the phrase stock market, your English will be good enough to know what these news words mean.
For more news words, visit our website at learningenglish.voanews.com.